Thank you for joining us today. Give just a little more time for people to join and we get our interpretation going before we start. Just a reminder to click on the globe symbol at the bottom to choose either English or Spanish. All right, so please click on that globe icon on your Zoom toolbar to choose your language if you're not already hearing this in your preferred language. This webinar is going to be in English with simultaneous Spanish interpretation. Marina? Thank you all for joining us. If you'd like to follow along with our slide deck tonight, you can access it here. I've highlighted it so you can see the deck to look at. A little bit about United Policyholders. We're a nonprofit in operation for 30 years, working to be a trusted information resource and voice for insurance consumers in all 50 states. We have quite a bit of expertise in disaster recovery, which we're hoping to share with you today. As I mentioned earlier, we're not for profit, not for sale. We're funded by donations and grants. We don't take money from insurance companies, and we do this work to help you move forward in this process. So with us today, we have Team Up, our professional staff. We have Eva Nowinchen and Caroline Winters, we've got partner agencies, and then our volunteers. So we have our team of consumer-focused professionals, Chris Walker with us today, and then we also have our survivor volunteers, Lois and John. Thank you for joining us. Our three programs, Roadmap to Recovery, this is where we provide guidance on insurance, restoring assets, getting people back home after catastrophe. We take those lessons learned from the Roadmap to Recovery program, and that feeds into our Roadmap for Preparedness to help people reduce risk and be more resilient. And then Advocacy in Action is where we take the work we do in those two areas and identify those pain points that we can work with other groups to fight for insurance consumer rights and protections, and kind of bring up making that level playing field much more level. Okay, and that this is a resource for you. Our 2021 Marshall Fire Help Library is available here. It's got very specific Colorado resources. You can sign up to get our emails and notifications for events. We've got professional consumer help resources here, sample letters and forms to look at, our Survivors Speak series, and upcoming workshops and events. And then we also have, for those of you who prefer your assistance in more bite-sized pieces, we have the little yellow book here. If you need a copy, it is available at the Superior Chamber of Commerce's Business Center. We will be restocking the donation center for the Marshall Fire over in the old Nordstrom's building fairly quickly, but you can also email if you would like a copy mailed to you. And fine print. This workshop is intended to be general guidance only. We are not providing legal advice. We don't endorse or warrant any of our sponsors or speakers at our workshops. And our speakers are volunteering their time as educators to help you today. So we're very appreciative of that. Just wanted to make sure that everybody understands the circumstances that we're working in. Today's presenters, myself, I'm the Deputy DD of United Policyholders, Lois and John Pratt. They are 2020 East Troublesome Fire survivors. Chris Rockers with the claims group. And this is a little bit about me. I'm going to skip that. You can look at this later. Just know that I met UP in 2007 when my community had a fire, and I've either been volunteering or working with them ever since. They've really impressed me, and I just want to be part of that effort. And then, Chris, I'll let you introduce yourself here.
Hi, my name is Chris Rockers. I'm a public adjuster, owner of the claims group. So we provide public adjusting services for homeowners and business owners in Colorado and throughout the country. handling property claims.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us today, Chris. This has been a great resource. Those books that ended up at the donation center got shipped to Chris's office and took space. He was a big help for us at the beginning when the DAC opened. And speaking at the DAC, you might have met Lois and John Pratt there. And so, John and Lois, I'll let you introduce yourselves. I threw in a couple of little things about you, but I'd like to talk about yourselves.
As the founder of Up often says, we're members of a club we never wanted to join, as well as you are now. So we lost everything in 2020 up here in Grand Lake. And I think the reason we're on here that's not on there is we were able to recover 100% of our coverage A and coverage B through a 15-month battle with State Farm. And it was a difficult process. We did it on our own. But we just want to share a little bit of what we've learned along the way. And hopefully we can help some of you. We feel for you and understand the pain you're going through.
Well, thank you all for joining us. So the goal of today's presentation is to help you collect the full amount your insurer owes you for every personal property item that was damaged or destroyed up to your policy limits in the least time-consuming and painless manner possible. And I know we've got some folks here who experienced partial loss as well. And the information we're presenting today is applicable no matter what your circumstances. If it's a total loss, obviously, it's a more detailed process, but for those of you with a partial loss and smoke damage, just be aware that that documentation may still be required. And so providing that inventory is going to be something that's expected of you for that. So the basic strategy is documenting, listing, evaluating every item, producing the available receipts, photographs, other evidence, and then if needed, getting extensions of time by making a written request. And before we dive into the topic, just to hit on a few of the truisms that, as John mentioned, our executive director, Amy Bach, loves to share. We just want to kind of set the stage for what where we are today. So insurance is that vehicle to get you back where you were before you lost, but it won't drive itself, right? So you have to be proactive to restore your assets, collecting all available insurance funds, asserting your rights, and asking for what you need. And we're here because we think there's no need to reinvent the wheel. Help is available. I flew in very late last night, so sorry if I'm stumbling over some words here. It's been a long day already. So guiding principles. You want to give your adjuster the chance to do the right thing, but don't be a pushover. Leverage and negotiation are key. The demeanor that we suggest you adopt is polite assertiveness. And of course, get help when you need it. You don't have to slog through this yourself. When you reach the point of being stuck, reach out for help. This is very much a truism. Recovery is a marathon. It's not a sprint. There are lots of twists and turns in the process. And every time you think you've figured out one piece, something else is going to pop up. So just be aware that it's going to take time, and give yourself time and space to get through this. And this is very key. Thinking of your insurance claim as a business transaction. There's this natural tension between you as the policyholder and the insurance company. Obviously, they want to minimize what they're going to pay on the claim. You want them to maximize it out. So working that out is in a professional manner. And just being aware that your adjusters are going to vary in personality and experience. I'm sure lots of you have already had your adjusters change a couple of times. And that will continue happening. So, just being aware of when you click with someone you can work with, push as hard as you can to get through that. Chris, I see anything to add there?
No, I think that you're spot on, Valerie. Again, don't be surprised if adjusters change throughout the course. Some adjusters might handle the dwelling and other structures portions of your claim. Others might handle ALE. Others may handle your personal property portions of the claim. The objective should be the same on both ends. You guys need to be honest and accurate as best you can, and you want the carrier held to the same standard.
Yeah. And then we firmly believe in this. Knowledge equals power. And the more you understand about your insurance benefits, your rights, and the value of your losses, the more benefits you're going to recover and the smoother your claims going to be. Time is on your side. I know it doesn't feel like it now, but statistics show the longer a claim stays open, the more money the insurer is going to pay. Be sure you ask for advances and extensions when needed. And just understanding, fully and accurately documenting and evaluating major loss takes time. As John shared, he and Lois spent 15 months on this process. It's a lot. And giving yourself space to do that and taking care of yourself while you're doing that's key. We encourage you to speak up, presenting your case, your request clearly in writing, explain what you need, when you need it, and why you're entitled to it. I'm going to skip to the last bullet here. Keeping that working copy of your policy on hand when you have those conversations, and when they tell you, especially as you're changing adjusters, saying you need to do this, ask them just very politely, can you show me where it says that in my policy? Because if it's not in your policy, where do they have the ability to ask you that question? Make that request of you. And then document everything. Take notes about who you talked to, the number you called, the date, the time, what was said. Just keep yourself organized. All right, and let me get myself a little closer here. And then back to this, give your insurance company a chance to do the right thing, but don't be a pushover. Again, going back to, can you show me where it says that in my policy, what's going on? All right, and then these are some of the statutes that relate to contents. And so 365 days after a total loss claim to submit your inventory. 360 days from expiration of ALE coverage to replace property and receive recoverable depreciation. Chris, is there any better way to say that than what I've got there? It always feels a little confusing no matter what.
Nope, I believe this is accurate. And I think that there are a couple of slides in the future that will reiterate this, but so 365 days to submit it. So if the loss happened on December 30th of last year, you have another 9 months or so. We suggest, even though it's a painful process, that you do not put off preparing your inventory. The sooner you address it, the better. The 365 after the expiration of ALE, if you have up to 24 months, you're going to have another year. So you'll have actually 3 years to collect your recoverable depreciation. But we believe it's important to make preparing the inventory, even though it's a burden, to make sure that you focus on that as early as you can, as often as you can, and try to complete it as soon as you can.
Can I just add one note there? I think it's easy to get in your head. You need to complete this massive list. And sometimes it's easier to do a smaller part and then submit the smaller part. It gets cash flowing to you. If you have to buy to get your RCV back and your depreciation. So it helps you get some smaller amounts of cash flowing rather than having to fill out a huge list and then waiting for a huge check to come in. Just, I think the key is to never say this is the final list. Say, here's some more of our list. We'd like to be paid for this list as soon as possible, because that gives you cash in your pocket.
So I believe that's a good point, John. And part of what we're seeing here, I believe, because the Division of Insurance and United Policyholders and others are working with carriers, they have been more significant advances that have been issued on the personal property portion of the claim, dependent upon who the carrier is. So right now, a number of homeowners probably have more than the East Troublesome people got up front. They may have gotten 30%. We understand certain carriers have issued up to 50 or 75%. So you should have a significant amount of money at this time. So I'm with John. You got to do it at your own pace. Consider submitting it whenever you want. Oftentimes it may be best, especially at this time, given the amount of advances that have been issued, because you're not going to get anything more until the money that they've advanced has been exceeded. But John is correct. Go at your own pace.
Thank you both for sharing that. And as Chris said, here's another slide that just lays out that requirement. That second to last bullet, the issue 30% of contents without an inventory, and that is if it were your primary home or a total loss. And as Chris said, I know when I was out in Boulder last week, there were a few people I met with that had gotten a secondary letter from their insurer saying, we're going to give you an extra 20% because Dora and the insurance commissioner have been pushing. And so, but bearing in mind, as Chris said, you are not going to exceed that until you have provided inventory and documentation. And so this is, again, same information as I mentioned earlier, this slide deck will be available on our site. So you can go to the links for any of these resources as well. And this was for partial loss specifically. Just wanted to make sure this bulletin was in here. This is the information to look for. Sorry, let me go back here. Is this second paragraph here. I'm going to take a little breath here because that's a lot of material to cover. And let's go into first step, knowing your policy and your insurance company. And this is important. You need to have a complete copy of your policy. You're going to be looking for limits on specific contents items, riders, schedules with increased coverage. These are typically things like artwork, jewelry, cameras, computers. You want to be organized. So saving all your receipts now as you're purchasing items. Go ahead and keep those items, scan them, keep track of them. If they're emailing them to you, you might want to set up a dedicated email to send them to, but just keep yourself very organized. And then of course, keeping track of the contents claims communication. And then talking to other survivors with the same insurance company. Some people are having more success in negotiating less stringent requirements. If you can find that person, they've got the same insurance company as you, see if you can get those additional considerations given to you.
I would just add one, that second bullet there, can't emphasize that enough about scanning receipts. A lot of simple, cash register receipts, you throw them in a box, which we were doing. We were just throwing them in a box as we bought things. And it's amazing how fast that those will fade away, even within 6, 8, 10 months. And so by scanning them, you have a hard copy. So I wouldn't just, don't follow our path and throw them in a box, but take the actual time to scan them into the computer and put them in the cloud in case you have a problem with your second dwelling.
Yeah, and there's some neat apps out there. If you've got an iPhone, the notes feature will actually allow you to scan documents and create them as a file. So there's, worst case is take a photo with it on your camera and email it to yourself. Any of those things work. So your personal property, your contents coverage covers, it's your personal property, you as the insurer, while it's anywhere in the world. And so the visual we tell people for your contents is imagine taking the roof off, turning it upside down and shaking it. So what falls out is your personal property. It will also include personal property outside. And for those of you who've seen John and Lois's inventory spreadsheet, you can see there were certain things that were in, not in the house proper, but elsewhere. And you want to check your policy for any off-premises coverage or limits, but being aware that many items are subject to specific coverage limits. And so here's an example. In this example, it's the contents coverage is called coverage C. State Farm is an anomaly. It's called coverage B. So that's why this we're calling it personal property and contents coverage. So this is an example of what you might see in your policy. Here's another example. This would be on the declaration page. How to find it. You want to check for any endorsements that might modify the amount of your contents. So again, going back to those sublimits, You're looking to see if you have an extended coverage. Is it only on the dwelling, or does it cover other coverages? So you're looking for that kind of information. And you're looking to see if things are scheduled, right? Scheduled items that add value. Again, another example, just going through this quickly. Here is the State Farm example. And so this is, again, what it would look like there if you have State Farm as your insurance carrier. And then getting on those special sublimits, right? Typically, you're going to have special sublimits in your policy that state the total amount the insurer is going to pay for each category, right? And if you had a rider on your policy, you might have additional coverage outside of those posted limits. So for example, I have USAA. They limited me to $1,500 in coverage for cameras. I have 3 daughters who are photography bugs. You know, just one lens for one of them is $1,500. So I have a rider that provides additional coverage. So, you know, being aware of what you've got. And so these are some common limits here. Big ones to be aware of are computers, electronics. Now, there are some, if you look here on F, E, F, G, H, I, J, that special limit is for theft of. So if you had furs and they were not stolen, that sublimit is not going to apply to you to the fire. It's only for theft. So looking for that kind of language in your when you're looking at these special sublimits. Okay, these are items that are usually not covered. So again, items that are specifically insured elsewhere. Animals, birds, fish. If you had subtenants or roommates, their materials are not covered. Motor vehicles, with the exception of these here, and recreational vehicles are not usually covered.
I was just going to add one little thing on the motor vehicles. We lost a truck, but the contents of the truck went on the homeowner's policy. So if you had straps or plugs or other things in your vehicle, they covered those over on the homeowner's side. So just be aware of that.
Right, because those are your contents. It just, you had them in one certain space. Yeah, good call. Thank you for sharing. So options for completing your contents personal property claim. So again, option A, preparing that detailed list that describes and values everything you lost, submitting it to your insurance company, and then submitting receipts as you replace items, or ask in writing for a full partial policy limit payout and a waiver, or hire professional help. Those are really the 3 options you've got there. I've got under B, there's some DORA notices. If you're significantly underinsured, asking for that waiver is well worth it. And Chris?
Yeah, so I wanted to share again or reiterate that it's extremely important for all homeowners to be aware of the terms and conditions of their specific policy. So most on the call are likely primary homeowners. That homeowner policy will be different if it's a rental policy, and that impacts what's covered under personal property as well. But within the policy, under the property section conditions, under duties of after a loss, it identifies what it is that needs to be provided to the carrier on your inventory. And it basically asks for the quantity, description, age, replacement cost, and then the overall amount of your loss. That's what you're going to be required to provide. There is no need, in my mind, to necessarily utilize the form that the carrier provides. It may, include a number of categories or columns that may not be necessary, nor are they specified in the policy, which we just identified. But you do want to capture the description, the approximate age, because it's not a test. You need to use your best judgment in providing an age, and that is a condition that is going to be required on every inventory that is submitted. That allows the carrier to apply depreciation, which we'll get to in a second. But we also believe it's extremely important that not only do you capture your replacement cost, but you guys take a proactive approach in capturing what your depreciation should be or what your ACV payment should be. You'll note that the carriers do not typically request that. They would prefer to tell you what that is. And throughout this and the upcoming slides, we'll see where the depreciation is a huge factor in what it is that you receive and when you receive it, and whether or not what's applied by the carrier is supported, or if what you have, knowing your possessions far better than the carrier, which is more credible or accurate. And of extreme importance, it's the quality, the age, the use, the condition, and the care that you give to your possessions that is going to impact what a proper depreciation amount is. So a bit long-winded, I apologize, but I mean, that's kind of the focus of I think, this presentation.
It actually leads right into our next slide, Chris, about depreciation.
Yep. So depreciation is negotiable, and here it's the more depreciation your insurer apply, the less you collect, which is why, I mean, many carriers will be happy to take whatever inventory you provide to them to include maybe only your replacement cost, and then they will apply the depreciation. We believe it's in your best interest to proactively provide and capture your depreciation based upon the numerous factors that should be applied in applying depreciation. There is no official standard. Carriers often use Exactaware. So it's a pricing program similar to the software program that they use to prepare estimates to rebuild a home, but that is specific to contents. And they believe that they have average or useful life expectancies for every bloody product under the world. And they would expect that everybody agrees to that depreciation amount. So they may use it, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily accurate or supported, which is why you need to share with them why it is that you believe your depreciation or your application as a percentage is just as supported, if not better than theirs. Be aware of items that should not be depreciated. So the antiques, the fine arts, jewelry, collectibles, perishable foods, and items that are relatively new. If you have something that is perhaps a year or less, very little, if any, depreciation should be applied to that. And if you don't apply the depreciation, they will be happy to, but it'll probably be far significant or higher than what you would want it to be or what it perhaps should be. So ask in writing that your insurer give you a copy of the depreciation schedule. Oftentimes, State Farm is an example again. When you get the inventory back from State Farm, it's a huge spreadsheet. You will have taken considerable time to prepare your spreadsheet. They will take that very information and they will redo it all over. And they will then have a column that identifies the age. And I believe that oftentimes their depreciation is based simply on the age of an item, and they do not take into consideration all the other factors that they should. And again, it's using a software program to apply depreciation. Be proactive and capture what you believe is proper depreciation.
Yeah, and if I can add on to that, if you have a collectible like Longaberger baskets, putting that collectible antique title at the beginning of the line item, they're less likely to miss it. And go over what they give it back, because they missed a lot of our antiques. And also wood furniture, put in front, the first line item should be wood, antique, collectible, jewelry, whatever it is that can't be depreciated, because if it's at the end, they just ignore it.
They make a lot of clerical mistakes, which either they're stupid or it's intentional. I don't know which, but it seems like they make a lot of clerical mistakes and they're never in their favor. So you just have to really watch it.
So on the fair depreciation, even before we get there, I can't emphasize enough the importance of being as detailed as you can in your description. So as Lois suggested, if you identify the antique or something up front, and to the extent that you truly have available supporting documentation, that's wonderful. Oftentimes on a total loss, you've lost your documentation. There's certain things that just might not be able to be provided, but that doesn't make your claim for having lost it any less valid. But make sure that your descriptions are as detailed as possible. And then oftentimes as you're preparing it, include a link as to where it is that you priced your possession using, pricing of like, kind, and quality. If you have that link, carriers, and State Farm is included in this, I think they have a great number of claims right now. If you have the supporting link, we find that oftentimes State Farm will acknowledge the cost to replace it. Where they truly hit you is right here in the depreciation. So this is correct. Policies do allow the carrier to issue payment withholding depreciation. And we'll get to another slide in a second, but as I shared, not only is the age and the condition, but it is the quality of the product that you use and the condition and the care that you give that must be factored in to lessen the depreciation that the carrier applies, which is why you should apply it. And if the carrier applies something differently, then they've got to answer to you or respond as to why their depreciation is somehow better than yours.
Right.
And again, as it notes here, there is no official depreciation schedule. I think it's fair game as long as both sides are being honest and accurate and as credible as they can be.
Thank you for that. And John and Lois, it sounds like you had to push back some on that to get that corrected, right?
We did.
Yeah, I wouldn't agree with Chris's statement that they're acting in, good faith to really get it right. We were able to get them to correct some clerical problems and a few things where they had forgotten, they didn't see the word antique or collectible. But it was a knockdown, drag out to get them to really move on much stuff. And that's the way the software is. And you're like, well, I don't agree with average, it's above average. Or we added a category we called like new. And they said, well, we don't have a like new. And I said, well, I don't care, your software is biased against the customer. It's like new. Are you saying it's new? No, because I would have said it was new, and they're seem like they're trying to trick you into saying it's new when it wasn't. I say, no, but if you have a dresser with no kids around and no dogs chewing on it, and it was 2 years old, it's not really beat up, nothing's broken on it. So we would call it like new. And they said, well, no, we can't deal with that. And they're just completely inflexible. So I don't know if they're really listening a whole lot. A few things they did kind of, I would call them more clerical issues that they corrected.
One of the things that we noted too, John, on a number of these troublesome claims is they apply the wrong tax rate. So watch for the tax rate. So maybe that's a clerical error or not, but given the number of claims that they had up there, you would think that they would know the tax rate to apply, but it impacts homeowners. Here, I'm assuming that they will apply the correct tax rate, but make sure you check it just to verify.
Yeah, because you will have adjusters from out of state who just don't understand the nuance. So yeah, always check that. This was just a slide to share. This is just responses from previous survivors. Obviously, there's more pressure now than ever to advance funds. But this is, for those of you who are finding people aren't moving forward, unfortunately, I wanted to throw this in there so to kind of normalize that. Yes, some of them are going to offer less. It's not a huge percentage, less than 25% will pay without requiring an inventory. And so, but what this means is it's always worth the ask, right? If you don't ask, you don't get. So always worth asking. All right, and so documenting and valuing your personal property, and all of you please chime in, at any point here on this section. So if the insurer is going to insist on that detailed inventory, as John mentioned, you're going to gather available receipts, photos, you're looking back at available records in the past, to build a complete and accurate list to the best of your knowledge of everything that was damaged or destroyed. And then as Chris mentioned, and John and Lois as well, trust but verify when you get those valuations back. look at it, make corrections, fight back, especially if you're seeing everything is uniformly depreciated 50%. That is not reflecting the condition and age of the items you had. You certainly could not have bought everything in one 5-year span and then depreciate it that way. And then these are tools to help you with that process.
Yep. And my thoughts there too are, we would anticipate that the carrier should want to verify the accuracy of your estimate versus you having to spend even additional time trying to verify theirs. And at the end of the day, if there is significant differences, we find it useful. It doesn't always happen, but to show that there's nothing that you have to hide and you simply want to establish the credibility and support your claim, ask for a meeting. Oftentimes they'll be happy to do it over the phone, or they might tell John or somebody from Alabama or elsewhere that they won't do certain things. But this is your claim. This is your loss. You are in Colorado. Request a meeting in person to go over your list and go over them item by item. I believe you're certainly entitled to that. Oftentimes carriers may resist, but at the end of the day, if there is a significant difference in what it is that you are claiming and is supported versus what the carrier is saying, a phone call is not going to resolve that issue. Ask for a meeting with the supervisor or somebody locally to go through it and see if you can't reach a resolution.
Good, Tim. And here's some other information we have that can help you with this. I want to throw out, if you have State Farm, I know they're probably not doing much of this now, but if you do have State Farm and you have a legitimate reason to need assistance with your claim, you can request going up to the supervisor. They provide you someone to help. I know we usually recommend that for folks. I'm finding it's not happening as much now. I'm assuming it's just they're getting swamped with requests. So, but I did want to flag that as a resource for you if you've got that. Ask your insurer if there is someone to help you with that. Okay, so step one, starting with your list, and this is whatever works for you, right? You can do it room by room, topic by topic, by category. Whatever works for you to fill in that sheet. Obviously, as Chris said, use in as much detail as possible. Leverage your family and friends to help you complete it. They might have photographs. They might be willing to do a room for you. They might be willing to price things. One of the nice things with COVID is that everybody has sharpened their game on online shopping and gift registries and shopping carts. So much easier for you to build a list of items and using the internet to build that list. And if you're able to go into an online store, just pretend you're doing the wedding shopping, right? I'm doing the wedding, the baby, whatever it is. Go through with the scanner and build your list. And if you don't feel like you can do that, ask a friend to do it for you. And then one of the biggest things, just celebrating every success, no matter how small. It's a massive task. We had a Thomas Fire survivor, and she kind of viewed it as making her list. She worked on it every week. She had just retired right before the fire. She wasn't going back to work, and she said this is the only paycheck she had, was working on this inventory. And so every week she worked on it, whatever it was. They went out and celebrated, went out to dinner, and just to acknowledge getting whatever they got done. It's like John said, doing that incremental lift to get it in. Just doing it in bite-sized pieces and then celebrating where you are with that.
I went to Whole Foods and worked on my pantry. And of course, I've got my legal pad in the store. And I don't know if the employees got nervous about what I was doing, or, I'm the competition. They didn't know what I was doing there. And I just said, I'm making a list for everything I lost. And I just kept going. And they said, "Oh, can we help you?" And I said, "Well, you don't know what was in my pantry. I'm just doing it." And another 20 minutes later, another employee came up and said, "Here's a gift card. We just have chosen you as our customer of the day." So they want to help. They want to help.
And seeing what they'll do, right? You know, so a great idea was of having that running list with you, right? Having your pen and paper with you, doing a note on your smartphone, you know, whatever works for you to remember. You know, checking with your bank, your credit card companies for records of previous purchases. Some do keep those records for several years. Ask any store that you frequently shop. I know Lois was a quilter. I had a woman who was a knitter in the CZU fire, and she literally had a wall full of baskets of yarn for her projects. And she called to buy more yarn, and then they, unbeknownst to her, they had been keeping records of what she liked, because they'd follow up and say, oh, we've got a new color in this variety that you like. They provided her like 2 years worth of shopping records, which
Right.
because she was a professional, you know, she had a lot. So, you know, asking, it doesn't hurt to ask.
And my friend started quilting. We started quilting at the same time. So she offered to inventory her quilting room that she did not lose. And she just took a weekend and inventoried the whole thing, sent it to me, and I could easily pick what I had and what I didn't have and add the things it was a tremendous help. And she was so happy to be helpful.
Yeah, and leveraging people who have that experience, right?
Right.
And have the ability to help you with that. And then obviously, you know, paying it forward to other people. So being able to work from that list. And then one other way to add to your list is just visualizing, right? You know, I know it's painful, but it's you know, a lot of things were out of sight, out of mind. And so you have to, you know, put yourself in the frame of, I opened this drawer, what was in this drawer? You know, what was in this cabinet? What was in this closet?
I drew pictures of every room. And my friends got used to me coming in and rustling through their closets and going through their junk drawers and opening up their kitchen cupboards, just so that I can remember what I had. And they were all happy to have me rifle through their houses.
Well, that's, yeah, go ahead, John.
I was just going to say, I think the bigger items are the easy ones. You know, the couch, the dining room table, the TV, the laptop, and things like that. Those are fairly easy to bang out. For us, anyways, after we were done with that, then we were quite short. And so then we had to, oh, wow, this isn't, at first you sort of think it's going to be not that hard. And then you start realizing, wow, we've got to come up with a lot of smaller items that are going to add up. And so that's when you have to start rifling people's drawers and really thinking kind of drawer by drawer in a cabinet. I had a big workshop. You know, we're older people, and, you know, so you got tons of tools and screws and parts and pieces. And so you just have to think, you know, one cabinet, one drawer at a time. I think I had 12 hammers in that drawer, you know, and so you really have to, you know, go back. It took us 10 months to build out our list of, I think it's close to 4,000 line items. And as if it's online there, if you sort it, you know, the big items, those are real easy. You know, the $5,000, $2,000, $3,000 things. But as you look at that, you start seeing thousands of lines that are under $20. And that's a lot of money to get to our max. And we had some pretty large policy limits. But we had, you know, ups lists, and we had other people's were shared their lists and different ideas. And somebody said blinds, you know, we had lots of blinds. Well, they're not part of the house. They're part of your contents. Oh my God, blinds. So then you'd spend a couple of days on things like that. A propane in your propane tank. You're like, oh, I never even thought of these things. And so you need sort of that reminder, because you can't really work through it on your own. So Use the lists that are out there. If some of your friends are proud of, well, I'm all done with mine. Great. Can I see it? And share that, or, get help wherever you can. I think one of the tips that Up gave us, two things, was just, do it in chunks. It's exhausting and it will wear you out and it will kill you if you just say, I'm going to do it this week. An hour a day, an hour and a half a day, that's probably enough. Otherwise, you can't sleep because you're thinking of content items, waking up and writing them on notepads. To Valerie's point, this really stuck with me on an Up session. This is the highest paying job you will have in your life. And you're going like, what? And you're like, you can spend an hour, and if you can come up with $20,000 worth of $10,000 worth of items, you just got paid maybe, $8,000 worth of depreciation or ACV, and maybe the whole full amount over time. And so you're never going to make that unless you're some super big shot. I don't know what job pays that. And so think of it as a job, grind it out, but don't kill yourself. Just break it into pieces. I'm going to do one cabinet on one wall, or the north wall today of my shop. That's all I can do today.
Well, thank you for that. And as Lois said, just any of you who made a mean curry, bear in mind it's probably $1,000 worth of spices by the time you finish going through everything you would have had on hand for Indian cooking. Just that one piece alone. And we do have a hot link spreadsheet that has like common kitchen items and things like that we'll share with everybody via email after. Estimating quantities. These are some tricks that have been shared previously. I honestly think Lois's advice is the best. Just go rummaging in your friend's closet and say, this is how I did them. Let me measure a foot and see how much space that was. Books and CDs are really pretty straightforward. It's just you understanding what dimensions are. I'm amazed at people who had a 2-foot wide bookcase and they think it's smaller, because your eyes are deceiving there. So be accurate with what the dimensions were, but then figuring out what those are. And then ask your insurer, can I lump them together? I had 36 square feet of shelving, right? Linear feet of shelving. Bob Hunnis will probably correct me because I'm using the wrong term. I'm sure I'm wrong. I'm sure I've got that wrong. But whatever it is, I had this many feet of bookcases, and they were double stacked, and I had mostly hardbacks. So what does that look like? All you need to know is what a foot of shelving would be. And then what the average cost is for that, and if they'll allow you to do that, extrapolate that. And for those types of things, I don't see them wanting to look through your book collection. And I am a book.
Well, and I would just add to that, Valerie. We did that. We took that tidbit. And we said, we measured and we said, hey, 200 books. And our first pass, we got back a letter that just said line blank needs to be itemized. And we had hundreds and hundreds of lines that they would not accept, kind of group things, where we said books, 200 books at $12.50 each. They said itemize. And we honestly, between us friends here, we said, all right, if we're itemizing, then you're going to get it, and we're going to say, nope, that was a $49.95 book, and that was a $39.95 book. And we were trying to just guess on an average, but now you're going to get the title and you're going to get the
real
full hardback edition.
Yeah.
Right. And we're going to look it up. We're going to give you the link. And, we were trying to be fair and sort of guesstimate. So State Farm would not accept that really on anything. Yeah, I guess like, dress shirts, 24 dress shirts. I think they accepted something like that. But I listed 7, wool suits, no, we would need detail on that. So it just depends on your estimator, and maybe it's how much the whole policy is. I'm not sure.
Right, but
Maybe they just don't like you. They may just not like us.
well, and it depends. I mean, so much of it depends on the adjuster, but at least knowing, okay, if I had, and I'll admit, I'm a book hoarder, so I have my daughter did my book inventory, and I had 27,000 books. I have way too many books in my house. My husband would like for lots of them to go away. So, but being able to say how much, if you don't know, like you don't have the daughter who does the inventory for months on end,
Right.
to be able to say I had this much square footage, how many books would fit there, and then being able to go to Barnes and Noble online or whoever and to say, these are the titles I know I had. These are, and just keep adding to that list. For the clothing, especially, just being able to figure out how many items you would have had in there, right? I mean, I don't know that you had 24 shirts, but you would have looked at it and said, okay, I
Right.
had some of these are the brands I had. How many would have fit in the closet space that I had?
Right.
So those rough dimensions help you, especially with storage containers, the closets, the drawers, but like Lois said earlier, just being able to rummage at a friend's house, just if they'll let you walk in and figure it out and mess around, it's worth its weight in gold to be able to figure that piece out.
And another
My
thing
only
that,
thoughts there, guys.
Mhm.
Go ahead, Lois.
so you went out and bought the things that you really, really, really needed. Start there. List those things. And then put submit that list. They're going to depreciate those things. And then you've got the receipts right there to match. So, a coat, those boots, because we bunched together like 5 pairs of boots, and then I only replaced one of them. So I didn't get my full value because I didn't itemize it.
Yeah.
Because
Lumping things can sort of bite you sometimes too, if you wind up having to replace them.
right. If you have to match the receipt to those lumps, you lose.
And Chris, you were going to share something?
Yeah, I mean, to me, the only thing, carrier, you're obligated to cooperate with the carrier, but the carrier needs to cooperate as well. So you can't provide that which you do not have, and you're making your best effort to identify that which you lost. There's no way, in my opinion, that State Farm or any carrier should require an insured, John, Lois, or others, to identify the titles of 270 or 27,000 books. It's just impossible to do. So if everyone is trying to do the right thing and resolve the claim, these type of issues shouldn't come up. It's only if a carrier is trying to be difficult that these types of issues come up. So you want to cooperate, you want to support your claim to the extent that you have lists, receipts and the like. Wonderful. If you don't, you must not be punished by the carrier for not providing what you don't have.
Wish it really worked that way.
Well, and Lois, I think your what you just shared feeds into this next one, right? Pricing, starting with what you've already replaced, those items you've got, because it's part of your duties after a loss is listing the replacement cost, right?
And they're going to depreciate everything you put on that list. So if you have to go to those receipts, then you're going to get full value for those things that you do replace. You have already replaced. I mean, we went out and bought boots because, we needed them right the next day. So start there.
Well, and remember, like when we're talking about like reaching out to credit card companies, your banks for old statements and pricing, that's what you purchase it. That's not the cost to replace. So bearing in mind what John said about lumping, and don't use sale prices because that's not the actual price to replace it unless you're buying it right then.
Correct.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that was interesting in this back and forth. So we submit, then they send what's State Farm, they call it a payment tracker. They've completely scrambled the item numbers. So you've lost track of your list, doesn't look like their list. But you could see their notes, their internal notes, where they did random price checks. And so if you listed even some silly things for $250, you could see their notes where they had typed in verified against a blank, blank, blank at this hyperlink. And so they're sort of as far as I could tell, they're randomly checking prices. They're not obviously checking everything. I think they're looking for some sort of reasonableness. But, you know, so they are doing spot checks, but I don't, you know, I think we didn't really have any issue. We had some high dollar things. We had, the biggest thing we had was a skid steer. It was $68,000, but we had $10,000 items and stuff. We never really got any argument about the price of anything. You know, it was really all about depreciation and the condition and stuff like that. That was just our experience. I'm not saying you won't. I know when we were at the resource center, people were saying I had a $15,000 bike. And I said, I'll bet you're going to have a challenge with that. You know, do you have a picture invoice to get repaired? Somebody can verify something like that. But, you know, so I think the real issues we had, list price, current price. If you can't get the exact same thing up, pick the next model up. Don't shoot yourself in the foot by picking the next model down. If the thing that you know you can't buy anymore, then get the next version up. The real battleground for us was depreciation, where we just had these, you know, you give them a list and the biggest item, we had $100,000 worth of construction equipment. And it wasn't a business, it was just to take care of our property and our road for our neighborhood. And we got $20,000 for it. So we lost $80,000 in depreciation. So, you know, that's the level of pain that you then have to try to negotiate and deal with and convince them the depreciation's inaccurate.
No, and that I think is key. I do want to mention two things while we're on pricing. So just to be aware, artwork and items you created yourself are only valued at the cost of the materials you used. If you bought other people's artwork, it would be, you know, finding an equivalent piece. But things that you've created yourself, if you're an artist, are going to be only materials. Just to be aware of that. And then that second to last bullet about dividing and conquering. And the reason we say, you know, when people want to help, take advantage of that offer, but when we say creating that backup documentation, having them create that PDF for you to have for reference, it's because you don't know where they got it. So you want to be accurate and as precise as you can be. And if you're borrowing someone else's brain to do some of the work, just make sure that you've got their homework so you can look at it.
Just one, I don't know if I'm treading on thin ice, but if you made something, I made cabinetry and desks and stuff. I didn't say I made it. I just found a really nice desk online that you would replace it with, and just found that item and said that's a $1,500 desk. The fact that the other one was made, to me, doesn't matter. Doesn't mean you're going to make the next one. Maybe you don't have time to make the next one. So I just found what's online, you know, what can you buy today to replace what I lost?
Right. And that call out is more for professional artists. So if this was a custom handmade table, you're looking at buying a custom handmade table. So
Right.
I don't think you have any issue with what you did.
Yeah.
And then, all right, so we're going to jump over to learning the lingo. And Chris, as we go through this section, just tell me to advance the slides.
You bet. So this is important too. So this is all part of your policy. Everyone has probably reviewed their policy by now, but replacement cost value, RC or RCV, is the cost today to replace that which you lost. So that's the replacement cost value. The actual cash value, ACV, is the cost that, and we'll get to a slide here in a second, but actual cash value is actually replacement cost less depreciation. Depreciation is what the carrier is going to apply and or you will apply to each of the entries on your inventory, that which you lost. Sometimes depreciation is called holdback or recoverable depreciation, but these are key terms. So when you guys got your policy, you have your dwelling A, your coverage limit. You didn't ask the carrier, most people didn't ask the carrier for that limit, they assigned that limit, and your coverage for your personal property is a percentage of your dwelling limit. Oftentimes it may be 70 or 75%. That's how your replacement cost value was determined. It's a percentage of your coverage A. But to get it, you're going to have to prepare your inventory. And sometimes the goal would be to reach your replacement cost limit on an ACV basis, which means, unfortunately, your loss would exceed your limit. But that is, you're getting more money up front for that which you lost, with hoping to minimize having to submit receipts to get the holdback. But the lingo would be RCV, ACV, and depreciation. So depreciation, yep, is the price that you would actually cost to repair or replace using today's pricing. Again, what you paid for something way back when isn't the cost that you want to use as your replacement cost. That's what you purchased it for. The replacement cost is truly the cost today. So as you guys are doing your research to trying to find your items, that's the price you want. And Valerie and John, you're absolutely right. Do not use sale pricing. Use the cost that you're actually going to pay. And this is true as well. Most homeowner policies include replacement cost or RC policies. You will see some that only provide for actual cash value payments, which is, again, the replacement cost less depreciation is your actual cash value. You do not get, if you have an ACV policy, you will not get the recoverable depreciation. You, perhaps late to know, you don't want an ACV policy. So here, actual cash value is the pre-loss sale of an item that a willing buyer would have paid immediately before the loss. That's true. The item is depreciated. That's what its value is right before the loss. So Craigslist, this is an example that can be used. You do not necessarily have to use Craigslist to price certain items, but if you wanted an ACV payment, you can use Craigslist. And again, here some policies limit payouts to ACV. That would be unfortunate because you're not truly getting the cost to replace your items. You're only getting the depreciated amount. And this is true. The actual cash value is defined by ACV equals replacement cost less depreciation. And again, folks, extremely important. The carrier's depreciation does not necessarily make it an accurate or proper depreciation. Apply your depreciation based upon the knowledge you have of the possessions you lost and their condition and the quality and the like. Depreciation is a loss in value of an item due to age, condition, wear and tear, and the other factors that we discussed. The carrier will primarily look at the age. That's not the sole determining factor as to what is proper or should be applied. So holdback, withheld amount, recoverable depreciation, those are terms you typically see. Non-recoverable depreciation, there should not be too many non-recoverable items for depreciation on a contents claim. On a dwelling claim, perhaps like fence or wooden fences, they may limit it to an ACV, that's non-recoverable depreciation. But you should be able to recover depreciation on most of your possessions. Replacement cost versus actual value. So on the left, yes. In this example, if you have a couch, let's say it's a $5,000 leather couch, that's what it costs today. That's what you would, and that's what you lost. Your RCV on your inventory is going to be $5,000. Carrier will look at it and say, okay, if that couch is 5 years old, they may apply 50% depreciation on that. So they're going to issue you a payment of $2,500. You will need to purchase that couch at $5,000 to get the remaining $25,000. So the $2,500 is the depreciation that they applied. In reality, we suggest that you say, if the true cost to replace that leather couch is $5,000 and it's 5 years old, and you are a husband and wife and your children are moved out of the home and it's in your family room and it's rarely used, or if it's in your living room and it's rarely used, depreciation may be at 20%, and 20% would be $1,000. You get $4,000 in your pocket. You then need to replace it to get the other $1,000. But there's a big difference, certainly on an inventory of $1,000 or $4,000 line items, if they withheld $2,500 versus the $1,000 that you say is appropriate. This is why depreciation is so critical on your claim, and it's why you guys should take a proactive approach. Next slide. So in this instance here, if you have a replacement cost policy, as discussed, they are entitled per the policy to withhold certain funds as depreciation. The policy provides that. That's the policy, that's the contract that you have with the carrier. They wrote it, you accepted it. Those are the conditions, or that's one of them. So they are entitled to depreciation or a holdback. And this identifies that there's, within the loss settlement provision, it identifies when and how they apply or when they'll issue the payment. But again, what's critical is the amount of depreciation that they withhold could be vastly different. Some carriers depreciate things up to 80%. Some are 75, maybe they cut it off at 75. That, we believe, is excessive, certainly if they're not taking into consideration all the information that you have that would support a lower amount. But here on the slide, you have replacement costs. The carrier is entitled to apply depreciation and issue an actual cash value. When you go purchase it, you will get the holdback. You'll get the difference between what it cost and the depreciation.
And this is just an example of the loss settlement provisions that we just mentioned.
Yep. And I believe what's important here, Valerie, is I believe this is a State Farm policy. And what's critical for people to understand is I think most people truly have coverage B, B1 limited replacement cost settlement. That's when you actually will get the holdback. If your policy says B2 depreciated loss settlement, you're getting ACV. You're not getting the full replacement cost. You're going to get a replacement cost less depreciation, and you're getting this depreciated amount, and that's all you will get. I'm hoping that most people truly have the replacement cost, but if State Farm policy and it reflects on your declaration pages or under the endorsements that you have B2, you're getting actual cash value.
And here's the example here that says this person has a B1. So you can see it on your deck page. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, and I think this is a renter's coverage. This is California.
Yeah, so again, it would be important for people to understand that, personal property under a renter's policy, this appears to be California, is going to be different than a homeowner's policy. And the personal property that is covered, sometimes it may, like John was saying, the language would be in a renter's policy that it's property that is used to maintain the property, which is different than some people may anticipate. So again, the renter is going to want personal property coverage. If it's the homeowner or the owner of the property and they have a rental policy, that's where their limit is going to be reduced or significantly different than if they capture things under the homeowner's policy.
All right, and then I had two questions here. Is there a time limit to submit your inventory?
Yes, so this I think is consistent with what a previous life. So 365 days after a total loss claim, you have that many days. You have a year to submit your inventory. Clearly, to the extent that you can submit things prior to that, wonderful. If you need to ask for an extension, I think you're free to do that. To me, there is very little prejudice, if any, to a carrier if you need additional time, but it would be difficult to ask for an extension if absolutely nothing has been done for a year and now you're just starting the process. But I believe that there's some reasonableness to this, and a year should be sufficient, but there are circumstances that come up that perhaps prevent people from actually completing it.
And that just gets back to clear communication with your adjuster. And as John shared earlier, submitting smaller pieces just to keep it moving, making that good faith effort to do that. And then is there a time limit to collect the replacement cost benefits? And this is only, of course, if you have a replacement cost policy.
Correct. And again, so it is 365 days after the expiration of ALE. Most ALE policies provide up to 24 months. So you would have then a year after the 24 months or 3 years to replace and capture recoverable depreciation. Communications with the carrier are key.
All right, and then Chris, more about depreciation, why it matters.
As the slide said, the biggest thing, and I think John confirmed it, that oftentimes carriers, and again, this isn't only about State Farm, most carriers, if you're able to support your replacement cost pricing, there's not often a dispute as to what it costs to replace it. It's the depreciation is where they often impact what they issue to you and the steps that you need to recover that holdback. So do take a proactive stance on what your depreciation is. Do request that they reconsider. 80%, 75% is excessive. It is negotiable. You do want to be able to support why it is that your depreciation amount is less than theirs and is more reasonable than theirs. There are certain things that if you have something that is 20 years old and it has been used, there's going to be a significant amount of depreciation because that's what's proper, that's what's accurate, that's what's supported. But if you have something that is very high quality and it's 20 years old and and again, it has very limited use, they can't just simply apply depreciation based upon the age of that possession. They need to take other factors into consideration.
Kind of moved us into the
Same thing
next
here.
slide. Yeah.
Pardon?
I moved us into the next slide because it fit very nicely.
Yep.
with what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, so you certainly challenge if you believe it's unfair, but that's why if you provide your depreciation up front, that is to me a positive step because then they have to respond as to why theirs are higher. And it's not your first bite at the apple is when you submit your claim versus waiting for them to tell you what they think that your depreciation is and the payment that they're going to issue to you. But certainly challenge if it seems unfair. We strongly believe that it's in your best interest to include depreciation in what it is that you submit.
Chris, I'm going to ask you a question on behalf of 207 participants tonight. One thing that caught us and may affect others is the life expectancy of an item. So it's not only the age or the condition, but then they also have this life expectancy. So we were caught on numerous items where the big one was my skid steer loader, where I said, oh, it's 12 years old. They said, well, will only last 8 years. And so you're really at full depreciation, regardless of condition, because they've got this table they look up in Exactaware that says how long things will last. Clothes are only good for 4 years. I had beautiful clothes that didn't get worn all that much that, were 10 years old and they were perfectly fine. In your list that you're suggesting you submit with your calculation, do you ever address the life expectancy of any of the items on that list?
So it's a great question, and everybody on this call will address that. So so when we submit something on behalf of insureds, we get a sense from them as to where they shopped, what they purchased. Again, the quality, the condition, the use, the care. We share all of that in our transmittal. We don't necessarily talk about useful life, but we try to proactively assert why it is that the depreciation that's been applied in the inventory that we are submitting is supported. And if they have questions, let's meet to discuss it. Oftentimes, we will still receive the same inventory from the carrier much like you received, and they'll have applied it, but it requires further dialogue. Their position, they're entitled to their position, but it doesn't make it right. So, and I appreciate that it took you guys a considerable amount of time, but you were successful getting your limits. And at the end of the day, that's what's necessary. You guys shouldn't have to pull out your hair to do it, but it is a long, tedious, burdensome process. The contents claim is probably the most difficult portion of the entire claim. But to answer your question, again, they use the Exactaware or others. Some carriers actually bring in a vendor. Inservio would be one of them. There are others that perhaps assist in preparing an inventory, and they'll be more than happy to assist in the replacement costs as well. But they're also working on behalf of the carrier, and they're probably capturing things and depreciating things at a level that's a bit excessive from what is proper. So the long answer to your short question is, I mean, do we face and have to address the useful life that they capture? Yes, but we believe it's important to do it up front, because when you submit your estimate and you've identified that, they need to also then take into consideration what it is that you have submitted. They don't have the only say. You need to be open to credible information from them. Sometimes it's just not credible or realistic.
And we would argue the same, that that condition, what is the remaining life expectancy of that item you've had, it should not just be determined by the age. That condition matters so much. And it's going to pop the next slide. You know, I know we mentioned this example before. The family with no children, 5-year-old couch might only be 20% depreciated. If you've got my dogs and my kids when they were little, it's probably, you know, totally depreciated, because in 5 years it would be destroyed, right? You know, but
I mean, this is extremely on point. Even though bloody illustration or cartoon, this tells you, and this is true, and this is what must be explained to the carrier up front. If you need to do it after the fact, then, you know, do it after, but do it again and again and again. This is what's important. And 20% is probably accurate. They'll depreciate it by 80%. That's not right.
yeah. So, and just, you know, wrapping on that, you know, being aware of that excessive depreciation, it needs to reflect the condition. You can look at depreciation guides to help you. We've got a sample on our website that you can look at to see. I think, John, it also gets into, you know, when you're looking at like IRS guidelines, it will give you the expected life frame. Like computers are very limited now, but, you know, being aware of that information. You know, and then the sixth step, protecting yourself. You know, never intentionally claim items you didn't have. You don't need to pad your claim in order to get the fair settlement. Even if you feel your adjuster is lowballing you on pricing, don't go high. What you're presenting should accurately reflect the items that you had. Now, having said that, it's, you know, you're doing the best you can with the information you've got from memory in a stressful situation. Innocent mistakes are very common. These inventories, they don't amount to insurance frauds. If you made a mistake, just let them know. Intentional misrepresentation is a felony, and those things can jeopardize your entire claim process and subject to the legal penalties. So just be aware and navigate this to protect yourself.
Just one, I swear, I guess I'm a cynic, but on ours, they added things, or there were items that just appeared that were not on our list that we submitted. And we called out, these are not our items. I don't know where you got them. They are not our items, in writing, because I honestly thought they did it intentionally to sort of, if we didn't say something, they'd use it to say we were trying to commit fraud. I don't know if that was true. Again, are they stupid, or are they intentionally trying to sort of catch you? But we specifically called out, these are not our items. We don't know what they're about.
Well, and I've heard people who were close to policy limits having an adjuster help them get over to get the policy limits. And I think for you, it's protecting yourself, saying, you know, I appreciate that but this is not my item, and just being very clear so that you don't own it. Chris, anything on that one? I know that one's fraught with possibilities there.
Yeah, there was no one at
Yeah, I mean,
State
it's-
Farm
it's-
trying to help us, believe me.
Yeah, so like John said too, I mean, is it possible that State Farm or other carriers have so much on their plates that they might mix up inventories and include things? It's possible. Do they do the wrong tax rate? It's possible. Do they do excessive depreciation? It's possible. As long as what the insured homeowners do and submit, and they're willing to stand by whatever it is. And again, there's nothing that they wouldn't share. That's their claim. Carriers often look at or believe that people may be trying to do something improper, which is the farthest thing from the truth. Most people are trying to do the right thing and recover from a devastating total loss. You would hope that the carrier and their adjusters also have a bit of compassion for what's happened and work cooperatively with you, but sometimes that's a pipe dream. Nonetheless, keep at it. Make sure that you guys do the right thing, support your claim, and fight the good fight. But don't take a step that would jeopardize your entire claim. Don't capture things that you did not have. Don't inflate your pricing, but certainly fight for everything that you're entitled to. That's what the policy provides.
Right. Well, and going back to, I think John and Lois both mentioned, correcting when you get the documentation back, correcting that, because Chris, you mentioned in Servio, and I know one of our publications on this topic, we have an in Servio example that points out the homeowner submitted a crystal bowl, and what they got back was a Pyrex dish from Walmart that was 1/10 of the price. So obviously you want to correct those things, catch those things.
I had a table sell $1,794, and it came back $17.94. And you just got to pour through what you get back to make sure that it's accurate. And then you can start the battle over depreciation and everything.
And it's hard because what you get back might not match what you gave them.
No, it doesn't match at all. Ours didn't match at all. Yeah.
And so it is a tedious process, as Chris said. I'm going to run through just a few things. Again, being organized, saving all your receipts, like John seconded. Recommend scanning, photocopying, emailing them so you have a copy for your records. You want to document and track all of your contents, claims, communications. You want to track your payments. They should be sending you when they make a payment to you, letting you know what coverage that it's applied to. We have a CPA who created a spreadsheet for us from the Woolsey fire. So that's on our website. It's a tool you can use to track each of your buckets of coverage. And a lot of people recommend opening a separate bank account when you're replacing items so that it's very clean and you have everything in one space. People who are using a card sometimes have opened a credit card just for that, so that everything is in one space so they can easily find what they need. Being strategic, right? You're unlikely to replace everything you've lost. It's a hassle. So trying to maximize, as Chris said, maximize your ACV payments by arguing for lower depreciation, especially on those big ticket items, and then identifying that true replacement cost. And as John and Lois said, they started out by buying the things they absolutely had to have. Those were probably some higher ticket items anyway, because you need the bed, you need the furniture, and just going ahead submitting those to get as much as you can. Anything for either anyone would like to share on this topic?
I was just going to add, we were very close to our limits once we finally got through all the ACV hassle, but there was still a fair amount of money on the table. And so we knew we had to buy some items. The construction equipment was one. Honestly, I just sorted in our spreadsheet, what did we have? What did they pay us in ACV? So what are they holding in depreciation, largest to smallest amount of money? And we then decided, okay, which ones of these do we actually want to buy? just a silly snowshoes. With 6 pair of snowshoes and poles, $325 each. We got like $28 each. Are we going to buy those? Yep. Sit down, REI, 6 pair of snowshoes, done. And you just made, you just got $3,000 back. Again, things we were going to buy. Suits, I don't wear suits anymore. I don't wear dress shoes anymore. It was a lot of money they held back, but we weren't going to replace those items. So again, just be strategic, think about, okay, what are we going to buy anyways? And what did they withhold depreciation on you?
Right.
And at this stage with the Marshall Fire, most people aren't going to have a place to put all their
they're not
possessions.
ready
So
for
you have,
any of that. They're not ready for buying anything really. Yeah.
that's correct. That's correct. So, you have plenty of time on these claims. So you're not, and again, with the advances that have been issued, you should be able to take your time in preparing your inventory. You can worry about the depreciation a bit down the road and purchasing things. But if you don't have, you don't want to be purchasing things and putting them into a temporary home. I don't foresee the benefit in that. There may be some in particular situations, but if you have a furnished place, don't be going out and spending money on possessions that you want to put in your new home until you have access to that new home. Some people may opt to buy an existing home. Maybe then you want your claim, your personal property claim resolved because you can start furnishing that place. But until you start rebuilding or until you purchase something, you do have time on your side.
Well, and that was our scenario, Chris. You're right. I should have been more specific. When we bought a replacement home, then suddenly we realized the clock just started as soon as we closed, 365 days. And we were like, okay, what are we going to buy? And now that we have a garage and a place to store these things. So you're absolutely right there. Sorry.
Well, and I think you highlighted exactly how strategic you were in moving forward on this process. Again, a reminder, be politely assertive. Your insurance company cashed your premium checks in return for promising you these 3 things, right? Peace of mind, loss reimbursement, prompt claim service. Your contract entitles you to all 3 of those. Your rights under the contract are protected under the laws of Colorado. And so, just in having these conversations to move this forward, always being politely assertive. Do what's best for you and your family. You're the only ones that can assess your tolerance for this process. Some people may feel the need to recover every dollar to be made whole. Others may settle for less, knowing they're going to leave money on the table, but they can't handle the process anymore. So you have to choose the best path for your family and your finances. Just be aware of that, but make it an informed decision, right? Because it's 2 pieces there. Just a reminder, stay informed. This is how to be added to our list. I know it says to request a copy of today's slides or video, email this, but you can also just go to the events where you're registered and get that information. I've lost my mouse here. There we go. Staying connected to other disaster survivors. We have our survivor forums going on. You can register at ephelp.org events. These are some survivors speak publications we have. Notice I've got John's getting an insurer to pay penalty interest here noted. Upcoming events here. So we've got your legal clinic coming up April 7th. Post wildfire rebuild financing on the 27th. A Q&A on the 13th, and those 2 survivors. This is just a representation in a different manner with the links to sign up directly. Previous webinars, this is just for your information. If you need help, please reach out to Dora. This is their contact information. John, I just wanted to wrap us with your.
I was going to say, this should be the first slide of this session. Valerie. We're at 90 days from the Marshall Fire. And this was a big, huge thing for us. We were on one of these up calls, and this came up, and I said, what do you mean they're supposed to settle all claims in 60 days? And I'm like, what? And then they skipped right past that slide. And I was frantically emailing and calling saying, what was that slide? And sure enough, this is a state regulation, the state of Colorado. This was all supposed to be settled by the end of February, which I'm guessing probably not a soul is settled completely with their claim. So that we saw this, and it was about 5 months or 4 or 5 months out, and we went on the Division of Insurance, just search Colorado Division of Insurance. They got this big banner right on the website, file a complaint. Took me about 5 minutes, file a complaint. I just said State Farm hasn't paid us, it's way past. And then they called right away. Division of Insurance called and said, well, we understand your situation. We need to allow State Farm 30 days to respond, which they did. Finally, at 29 days, they called and said, oh gosh, looks like maybe we haven't been very prompt with this. And anyways, I won't go through all the boring detail, but back and forth. And we were able to get about $14,000 out of State Farm, which was way less than we thought they owed us, but that's what we got from them. And that's this 8% interest they owe you on the funds that haven't been paid. So up, just that one little slide there helped us recover $14,000 in interest penalty, and State Farm, actually, this was not a big, long, drawn out process to get the 14. I think they owed us a lot more. That was a long, drawn out process, but they paid this initial amount up front. And I don't know, Chris, maybe you could comment on, or Valerie, you're at 90 days. Should people file a complaint now, even though they don't really know what the amount they feel is owed? You can always file it later, but you might want to file it now. Chris, comment, just to kind of light a little fire under them.
You bet. Valerie, can you go to the previous slide, please?
Yeah.
So here's the issue, guys. I believe John and Lois were successful given where they were in their claim at that time, but they weren't at 60 days. So here is they have 60 days after a valid and complete claim. Right now, I don't believe anybody with Marshall has a complete and valid claim yet, because people are still putting their inventories together. You don't know what your loss is. People are still trying to find replacement cost or rebuild estimates for their dwelling. At this point in time, I'd be surprised if anybody truly has measured the amount of their loss. If, however, in a few months you do, and then 60-day passes, I believe you certainly have a valid claim or complaint to raise with the Division of Insurance. I'm not sure it's right now, unless you truly have identified what your damages are, you've submitted everything, and it's supported. They're going to have 60 days from when that is valid and complete to address it. So I believe the key terms are valid and complete claim, and once that's received, then the clock starts ticking.
Chris, can I add that this was only on a dwelling? This didn't have anything to do with our contents.
And we actually filed
Sure,
a separate complaint on the contents after they had all of our information for 147 days. Then we filed a separate complaint just on the coverage B part from State Farm.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, they did use that immediately, saying, well, we didn't have a complete claim until our person was on site, which was 30 days after we filed the complaint, or the claim.
It is something for homeowners to be aware of if the claim goes south after it's completed. But be proactive in submitting your claim, figuring out all your damages, And then this is an opportunity to hold the carrier accountable if they don't adjust and issue payments in a timely manner, for sure.
Well, thank you. And then I want to thank our donors and our funders, and most especially the Community Foundation of Boulder County for supporting our Roadmap to Recovery program here. I'm not going to talk about these. These are just, I like to end our Marshall Fire webinars with the regulations. That way you've got them as an easy access on the deck. Let me stop sharing the screen. I want to thank Chris and Lois and John for joining us today. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Eva and Carolyn and Karina, our interpreter. Any last words of wisdom you guys would like to share with everybody that's with us today?
My parting comment would be, in addition to making sure that you're aware of the terms and conditions of your policy and seeking input from those, if you have questions, do go to the slides that Valerie just went through. Do know that there are resources with the Division of Insurance and the statutes that are aimed at protecting you. Be aware of those and then use them if and when applicable. So it's more information, so the information is power. But there are regulations in place to try to protect Colorado consumers. Use them to your advantage to the extent that the carrier isn't doing the right thing.
All right, Lois, anything you'd like to add?
No, thanks for having me.
Thank you. John, last words?
I would say two things. Don't be proud. Ask for help. Use your resources. Ask for help. Ask your friends. Your friends want to help you. There's organizations out there that want to help you. And go ahead. This is a time in your life to actually use those resources and ask your friends for some help, whatever that means to you. If it's bring over dinner or whatever. And I think the other is just, this is a marathon. It's a hard road. Be persistent. Fight for your own rights, or hire Chris. Whatever works for you. If it's just too much, and I think for some people it's just too much to go it on your own, and you need help. You need professional help sometimes. And so do what's right for yourself, to take care of yourself.
Well, thank you for those words. Thank all of you for joining us today, and thank you guys so much for being part of this webinar. We appreciate you giving us time. I hope everyone has a good evening. Take care, and we will see you very soon.